Hey guys, it's Becky. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm showing you when I made my first sourdough bread with the starter that I've been making for the first time with the Needy Homesteader. So for the bread, I actually went through Mike from Pro Homecooks. I'll leave his YouTube down below. He's a great baker. And so for his instructions, he starts you off with about 87 grams of your sourdough starter, and then 100 grams of your flour and 100 grams of water. So what I did was I used my sourdough starter that I've made and put both ingredients, the whole wheat flour and the water, and you leave it until it grows in size. And so that's what I'm doing here. And so after that, you'll see what it looks like after the next day. So I kind of just left it out and didn't touch it until the next day. So this is the next day, how the sourdough starter looks. Mike from Pro Home Cook says if it looks puffy like that, you get some of like a little rise, it's ready to bake for baking. For his instructions of how to make bread, sourdough bread, is you use a calculation, and so I put it up here on the screen, where if depending on your hydration is how much flour and water you will use. So for this, he used 700 grams of flour, either 100 grams of one flour or 600 grams of another. Since this bread is 75% hydration and I use 700 grams of flour, divide that by 0.75 of the hydration of the bread, and that equals 525 grams you'll need for water. So the actual ingredients for this bread is the 700 grams of flour, which I put 100 grams of whole wheat flour, 600 grams of organic all-purpose flour, 525 grams of water, you can put about 120 to 180 grams of the sourdough starter, and about 14 grams of salt. And so that is the complete recipe for this 75% hydration sourdough bread. Higher hydration, I've learned that the higher hydration, the harder it is to work with the dough. So as a beginner, I wouldn't recommend you starting with the high hydration because I've learned that. But you know, for this, my first bread, I was just following what he was doing, and he was doing 75% hydration. And so yeah, I was kind of working with the dough that I have basically no experience working with, but it turned out good at the end. So as you can see, the dough looks nice and soft, and I cover it for about 30 minutes. I went ahead and used my wet hands, which water helps so much when you're using this type of dough. I just kind of slap and fold is called. That's what he does to kind of form the bread. And so I did that the first time, and I did that a second time as well. So as you see, I'm doing that here, the slapping and folding of the bread. But you can see that the bread comes along very well, and it just starts looking better. And so I wet my hands again, and I just do the slap and fold. And by the way, that scraper is a must when you're making this type of bread. It was helpful to get that off my wood board. So yeah, so as you see, I'm showing you how it looks. The dough looks so much better after a couple of folds and rest. And so that's what I'm doing here. And obviously my hands are wet, so that's why the dough is not sticking to me. I let the dough rest in an oiled bowl until it doubles in size. So this is the next day because I didn't have time to do it. So I just left it in the refrigerator and got to it the next day. And it actually looks so much different from the beginning because I was able to let it rest for a while. And I cut it in half because with this recipe, you can make up to 2 sourdough loaves. And so that tool is very helpful too, to cut bread and just to use it to scrape it off. Again, I'm using my wet hands to deal with the dough. And actually, with these videos, with this first video, my first actual sourdough bread, I lost footage of what I did, which was put the dough in the baking baskets. And so, as you see, I I did do that and put some, the first time I actually put flour and trying to shape the bread how he teaches you how to do. Video that you're about to see is how to actually put the bread in the bannetons. Put pretty much flour it. All flouring is so important. He was saying that you need to flour it so it won't stick, and then you put flour all on top of the bread and around it so it won't stick, and that's very important. So this is another bread that I did, but I'm just showing you what you're supposed to do when it comes to the bannetons. Put a bunch of flour and making sure it doesn't stick. Now I stored the bannetons in the refrigerator overnight, and so when I took them out, you can see that it has rised, the bread, and it's proof. What he did was he pushed with his finger the bread, and if it stays down a little bit, indented a little bit, then it's ready to bake. Now I preheated the oven at 500 degrees, my Dutch oven. I put it inside the oven and let it preheat. And then what I did was, with my wax paper, for some reason it sticks to bread, so I put coconut oil. You don't have to do that, but for me, I noticed that when I bake it sticks, so that's what I did. And I went ahead and scored my first ever bread. I've never scored, I think that's how you say it, scored a bread before. I tried my best. So one line down the middle, put it in the Dutch pan that's really hot, and I put it back in the oven for 20 minutes with the lid on. Make sure it's really secure because it's super important. And as you see, my first one ever came out pretty good. So look at that, my first ever sourdough bread. Now I turned on the oven to 475 and put that bread back in the oven, but this time with the lid off. And that is just to make sure that the browning of the bread happens. Now for the second bread, you can see me doing the same thing. I size up the wax paper and I'm supposed to put coconut oil, but I didn't, and I totally forgot to do that. And you'll see that in a few minutes that I realize that I didn't put coconut oil. And so I'm dusting off the flour, and I score it very badly, by the way. I really tried hard, and I kind of felt like I was butchering it, but you know, I tried my best for the first time doing this. I had my pan, my Dutch oven, ready to go, and as soon as I realized, oh, I didn't put oil on the pan, I had to improvise. So you'll see me here pretty much butcher my dough, and I go ahead and I try to take it off, and this is why I put all coconut oil on my wax paper, because it just sticks to bread. So I had the idea of just dumping it back in the banneton. That's my new wax paper with the coconut oil that I should have done in the beginning, but I didn't. And I went ahead and I tried to take it off, but it wouldn't come off. And so you see me ruining it, but I didn't want to give up. I really wanted to bake it, and I tried to shape it the best I could. I knew it wasn't going to be as pretty as my first one, but I tried my best to reshape it and put it back in the Dutch oven for 500 degrees. And that's how that one turned out. And so this is the first bread. See, with the coconut oil, it comes out so much easier. And that's how my first bread baked. When I cut my first bread to see inside it, I couldn't wait, but it looked pretty good. And that's my second bread that I made, cutting it down the middle. And also, even though it didn't look pretty on the outside, it definitely was yummy on the inside. So there you go, my first ever sourdough bread. I don't think I did a bad job. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Thanks, Mike from Pro Home Cooks.